Pamela Lyndon Travers, OB, born Helen Lyndon Goff, August 9, 1899, April 23, 1996, was an Australian-born British novelist, actress, and journalist who emigrated to England and lived most of her adult life there. She is known best for the Mary Poppins series of children's books featuring the magical English nanny Mary Poppins. Upon immigrating to England in 1924, Goff began to write under the pen name L Travers. In 1933, she began writing the novel Mary Poppins, first of the Poppins books. Travers traveled to New York City during World War II while working for the British Ministry of Information. At that time, Walt Disney contacted her about selling to Disney Studios the rights for a film adaptation of Mary Poppins, whose sequel Mary Poppins Comes Back was also in print. After years of contact, Walt Disney did obtain the rights and the Disney film Mary Poppins premiered in 1964. In 2004, a new British musical theatre adaptation of the books and the film opened in the West End. It premiered on Broadway in 2006. For services to literature, Travers was made an Officer of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II in 1977. Early life: Helen Lyndon Goff, known within her family as Lyndon, was born August 9, 1899 in Maryborough, Queensland, Australia. Her mother Margaret Agnes Goff, née Moorhead, was Australian and the niece of Boyd Dunlop Moorhead, Premier of Queensland from 1888 to 1890. Her father Travers Robert Goff was of Irish descent and born in Deptford, South London, England. He was unsuccessful as a bank manager due to his chronic alcoholism, and was eventually demoted to the position of bank clerk. The family lived in a large home with servants in Maryborough until Lyndon was 5 years old, when they relocated to Woollahra in 1905. 2 years later, Travers Goff died at home of tuberculosis at the age of 43. Following her father's death, Goff, along with her mother and sisters, moved to Bowral, New South Wales, in 1907. Living there until 1917. She boarded at Normanhurst Girls' School in Ashfield, a suburb of Sydney, during World War I. Career: Lyndon Goff began publishing her poems while still a teenager. She wrote for the Bulletin and Triad and during that time began gaining a reputation as an actress under the stage name Pamela Lyndon Travers. She toured Australia and New Zealand with Alan Wilkie's Shakespearean Company, before leaving for England in 1924. There she dedicated herself to writing under the pen name L Travers. In 1931, she and her friend Madge Burnand moved from their rented flat in London to a thatched cottage in Sussex. It was here, in the winter of 1933, that she began to write Mary Poppins. Travers greatly admired and emulated J. M. Barrie, author of the 1911 novel Peter and Wendy, whose structure resembles the Mary Poppins series in some ways. Her first publisher was Barrie's ward Peter Llewellyn Davis, one of the 5 Llewellyn Davis boys who were the inspiration for Peter Pan. While in Ireland in 1925, Travers met the poet George William Russell, who wrote under the name Ash, who, as editor of the Irish Statesman, accepted some of her poems for publication. Through Russell, whose kindness towards younger writers was legendary, Travers met W. B. Yeats, Oliver St. John Gogarty, and other Irish poets who fostered her interest in and knowledge of world mythology. She had studied the Gurdjieff system under Jane Heap and in March 1936, with the help of Jessie Rage, widow of Alfred Richard Rage, she met the mystic George Gurdjieff, who would have a great effect on her, as well as on several other literary figures. At the invitation of her friend, U.S. Commissioner of Indian Affairs John Collier, Travers spent 2 summers living among the Navajo, Hopi and Pueblo peoples studying their mythology and folklore. After the war, she became writer-in-residence at Radcliffe College and Smith College. She returned to England, making only one brief visit to Sydney in 1960 while on her way to Japan to study Zen mysticism. Travers' literary output other than Mary Poppins and its sequels included other novels, poetry collections and works of nonfiction. Mary Poppins, published in London in 1934, Mary Poppins was Travers' first literary success. Many sequels followed, the last in 1988. While appearing as a guest on BBC Radio 4's radio program Desert Island Discs in May 1977, Travers revealed that the name M. Poppins originated from childhood stories that she contrived for her sisters, and that she was still in possession of a book from that age with this name inscribed within. Travers' great-aunt, Helen Moorhead, who lived in Woollera, Sydney, and used to say, "Spit spot, into bed," is a likely inspiration for the character. Disney version. The musical film adaptation Mary Poppins was released by Walt Disney Pictures in 1964. Primarily based on the original 1934 novel of the same name, it also lifted elements from the 1935 sequel Mary Poppins Comes Back. Travers was an advisor in the production, but she disapproved of the Poppins character in its Disney version, with harsher aspects diluted. She felt ambivalent about the music, and she so hated the use of animation that she ruled out any further adaptations of the series. She received no invitation to the film's star-studded premiere until she embarrassed a Disney executive into extending one. At the after-party, she said loudly, "The first thing that has to go is the animation sequence." Disney replied, "Pamela, the ship has sailed," and walked away. Enraged at what she considered shabby treatment at Disney's hands, Travers would never agree to another Disney adaptation of Poppins, though Disney made several attempts to persuade her to change her mind. Travers so disliked the Disney adaptation and the way she felt she had been treated during the production that when producer Cameron Mackintosh approached her years later about making the British stage musical, she acquiesced only on conditions that English-born writers alone and no one from the original film production were to be directly involved. This specifically excluded the Sherman Brothers from writing additional songs for the production. However, original songs and other aspects from the 1964 film were allowed to be incorporated into the production. These points were even stipulated in her last will and testament. The 2013 motion picture Saving Mr. Banks is a dramatized retelling of both the working process during the planning of Mary Poppins and also that of Travers' early life, drawing parallels with Mary Poppins and that of the author's childhood. The movie stars Emma Thompson as L Travers and Tom Hanks as Walt Disney. Regarding Travers' portrayal in the film, critic Margaret Lyons wrote, "What was presented as a joyless, loveless Beden finally giving herself over to the delight and imagination of the wonderful world of Disney could just as easily have been presented as a creative, passionate person, with dignity and real emotions, getting steamrolled by one of the most powerful companies in the world." Personal life. Though Travers had numerous fleeting relationships with men throughout her life, she lived for more than a decade with Madge Burnand, daughter of Sir Francis Burnand, a playwright and the former editor of Punch. They shared a London flat from 1927 to 1934, then moved to a thatched cottage in Sussex, where Travers published the first of the Mary Poppins books. Their friendship, in the words of one biographer, was intense, but equally ambiguous. At the age of 40, 2 years after moving out on her own, Travers adopted a baby boy from Ireland whom she named Camillus Travers Hone. He was the grandchild of Joseph Hone, W.B. Yeats' first biographer, who was raising his 7 grandchildren with his wife. Camillus was unaware of his true parentage or the existence of any siblings until the age of 17, when Anthony Hone, his twin brother, came to London and knocked on the door of Travers' house. He had been drinking and demanded to see his brother. Travers refused to allow it and threatened to call the police. Anthony left, but soon after, Camillus, following an argument with Travers, went looking for his brother and found him in a pub on King's Road. Travers was made an officer of the Order of the British Empire in 1977. She lived into advanced old age, but her health declined toward the end of her life. Travers died in London on April 23, 1996 at the age of 96. Her son Camillus died in London in November 2011.